From 18.
Yes, from verse 18, please.
Then
In the name of the
Jacob,
Father and the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God, amen.
then Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan. When he came from Padan Aram, and he pitched his tent before the city. And he bought the parcel of land where he had pitched his tent from the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. Then he erected an altar there and called it El Eloh Israel.
El Elohe Israel. Wonderful. Dave, we need to understand this passage because it's important, so it will help explain what's coming next. Jacob met Esau. Esau said, let's go very quickly to our land. He said, I can't go as fast because of the women and the children. It's been a long journey and the beasts. We're going to take our time. You go ahead and I'll catch up. But on his way, he did come into Canaan, but he stopped at a place called Padan Aram. Now remember Canaan before Jacob left. One of the reasons that his mother Rebecca wanted him to leave was she wanted him to get married from her family, because those that dwelt in Canaan were seen as sinners. They didn't know the God of Abraham or Isaac. And she already saw bad experience with Esau, who had already married from the daughters of Canaan. And she wasn't comfortable because they didn't know their rights, they didn't know their traditions, they didn't know how they lived. And so for her, there was no unity. But then what did Jacob do? Rather than go back to the part of Canaan where Esau's in, he went and stopped in Padan Aram, which is in the middle of these wonderful people that Rebecca was trying to get her son away from. And then we noticed something as well. When he pitched his tent there, it says he bought a parcel of land. I want to ask you a question. What's the problem with this statement? They never bought land. They were nomads. But not nomads in the sense of going from one place to the other to the other. Where was their land supposed to come from? From God. That was the promise. I will give you the promised land. So we see that this is the first time between Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that land is actually being purchased. Although the promise for God was, I will give you. So we see two things here. Jacob allows his family and himself to be in an area in the middle of those that don't know his God. And now he's trading with them in terms of buying from them. And obviously, if he's in the middle of them and he's already started to buy from them, consequentially, what are they going to do? They're going to buy from him also. So he's opened the door, even though in his father's land, the land that God's promised him, to dealing and living with those that don't know God. What do you think will come of that? Trouble. For sure. For sure it will be trouble. And our beautiful church tells us that this is where we need to always be careful that we can't say that we are God's children, but try to live in an area or with people or deal with people that are not. We tell the youth, you can't be out partying all of Saturday night and say, I'm going to go and wear my tonya on Sunday morning. We can't be amongst people that even talking badly about the church, or have got different views about the church, or seeing the church in a light that's not appropriate, and then say that we love our church. We can't be in an environment where the environment is pushing wrong ideals, thoughts, teachings, and then say, no, we're firm in the faith. We have to be protective of who we deal with and how we deal with it. You're going to say to me, Abuna, I can't help who I come in context with at work. I can't help who is sitting next to my child at school. I can't help who my neighbor is. Of course. But we can help how we deal with them. We can help how we deal with them. We can help how much of the door we open to them. Why am I saying this? We're going to see this in chapter 34. Can I get someone to start reading from chapter 34, please? Wonderful. I like the sharing.
Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her, he took her and lay with her and violated her. His soul was strongly attracted to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the young woman and spoke kindly to the young woman. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this young woman as a wife." And Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah his daughter. Now his sons were with his livestock in the field, so Jacob held his peace until they came. Then Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. And the sons of Jacob came in from the field when they heard it. And the men were grieved and very angry, because he had done a disgraceful thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, a thing which ought not to be done.
So, as we said, he's living with these people. They are Gentiles, they worship idols, they don't know God, they don't know their traditions. As they are obviously trading with them, they get comfortable with them. So what does his daughter Dinah do? She's inquisitive. She goes into the town to see what this wonderful place is about. She catches the eye of the prince, if you like, Shechem's son, and he commits sin with her. Because it says his soul was attached to her. So obviously she was appealing to his side. He wanted her for himself. We see then that Jacob doesn't do anything until his sons come back. And when his sons come back, they are very angry in terms of how their sister had been treated or used. So if we take a step back and look at what's happened, not only has he come into a land that he knows there are people that don't follow their traditions, but he bought from them. It's like going to a neighbor that you know is not appropriate to deal with and going and opening your house and saying, "Hey, come into my house." And then allowing his children to deal with their children, allowing your kids to deal with their kids. And then you get this incident happens, and then we come back and say we're angry. Even though it says at the end of last chapter that he built an altar for God, and thank God. Surely if I am thanking God and building an altar, God is going to protect me. God is going to keep me. God's going to preserve me. But the problem here is that he's still not fulfilling God's promise. God's promise is for him to do God's plan. And this is not God's plan. God didn't tell him go buy a piece of land. God didn't tell him go and deal with people that are Gentiles. God didn't tell him any of that. He said go back to your father's house, the land of your fathers. But Jacob didn't do that. And we see the problems start. We sometimes, when we go into a path that is not correct, and we say we do the prayers and we do the matanyas and we go to the liturgies and we fast and so on, We do it to try to relieve our conscience. But we know that that way is not God's way. The prayer, the fasting, coming to the liturgy is a blessing. But if you know if that's not God's way, then everything you're doing to try to make yourself feel better is not going to equate to it being acceptable by God. And the example I used in terms of neighbors is a very real one. There was a little child, he came and he was telling me about an incident where they had at his grandmother's house, because his grandmother was letting him play with other kids in the area. And the other kids, that they were all primary school age, I don't want to say an age, the kids from the neighbors were showing this other kid pornography. They were asking them to do bad things in terms of their body. And these are young children. This is where we need to be careful. Just like Jacob, of who we open our door to and who we don't open our door to. For the sake of our children and for the sake of continuing God's way. It was real back then, and we saw what happened to Dina. It's even more real now. So let's continue. So we're already on the wrong. This is Jacob's been changed to Israel. He's now a man of God, but so already he's in the black. He's in the bad book. Let's see how he continues and where we get to. Can I get someone to continue reading, please, from verse 8.
But Hamor spoke to them, saying, "The soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughters. Please give her to him as a wife, and make marriage with us. Give your daughters to us, and take our daughters to yourselves. So you shall dwell with us, and the land shall be before you. Dwell and trade in it, and acquire position for yourselves in it." Then Shechem said to her father and her brothers, "Let me find favor in your eyes, and whatever you say to me I will give. Ask me ever so much dowry and gift, and I will give according to what you say to me. But give me the young woman as a wife." But the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamor his father and spoke deceitfully, because he had defiled Dinah their sister. And they said to them, "We cannot do these things to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a reproach to us. But on this condition we will consent to you, if you will become as we are. If ever a male of you is circumcised, then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters to us, and we will dwell with you, and you will become one people. But if you will not heed us and be circumcised, then we will take our daughters and be gone."
Okay, we'll stop there. So the solution is offered because he can see Hamor is attached to her, that follow our traditions, get circumcised, then we will join you as one people, or we can no longer be with you, we'll move on. Do you think that's a good solution or a bad solution? You're shaking your head, Ellen.
He's going to get circumcised and follow God because he wants Jacob's daughter. Is that a justified reason to enter?
Great point. So what else? So you're saying it's wrong because the reason and the purpose is wrong.
Yeah, he doesn't want to know God. He just wants it for Jacob's daughter.
What else? What do you guys think?
To follow the customs of the Jews. They are just want them to be tricked, like it's a trick.
It's just like a Band-Aid. It's like a Band-Aid. Okay, there's a problem. We'll put a Band-Aid over it. Is that you will be like us, and everything is done. Everything is solved. But who's missing from this discussion? You'll take our traditions, we'll take your traditions. Jacob's in the discussion, but he's saying, if you get circumcised, what was the point of getting circumcised? In the Jewish law, it's a matter of purification. Purification for who? It's a symbol of being not just purified, but you are dedicated to God. Where is the discussion here about the belief? You take our God. You believe in our God. You follow our God. You become one people in God. But as Helen said, no, this is for a purpose and a reason to band-aid a bad situation. And the objective here is keeping the peace because of what they did to Dinah, and they still want Dinah. So the actual focus is still not about God, it's about Jacob dealing with some other entity. Again. So, let's keep on reading from verse 18. Let's see what happens next.
And their words were pleased, Hamor and Shechem and Hamor's son. So the young man did not delay to do the thing, because he delighted in Jacob's daughter. He was more honorable than all the household of his father. And Hamor and Shechem, his son, came to the gate of their city and spoke to the men of their city, saying, These men are at peace with us, therefore let them dwell in the land and trade in it. For indeed the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters to us as wives, and let us give them our daughters. Only on this condition will the men consent to dwell with us, to be one people, if every male among us is circumcised as they are circumcised. We will not their livestock, their property, and every animal of theirs be ours. Only let us consent to them, and they will dwell with us. And all who went out of the gate of his city hated Hamor and Shechem his son. Every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of his city. Now it came to pass on the third day, when they were in pain, and two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword and came boldly upon the city and killed all the males. And they killed Hamor and Shechem his son with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah from Shechem's house and went out. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain and plundered the city, because their sister had been defiled. They took their sheep, their oxen, and their donkeys, what was in the city and what was in the field, and all their wealth, all their little ones and their wives they took captive, and they plundered even all that was in their houses.
Okay, we'll pause here. So Jacob made the agreement with Shechem, and they all got circumcised. Jacob was meaning peace. But Simon and Levi, and potentially the rest of his sons, as they would have been very close together, had an alternative, an ulterior motive. Is that what? Wait until all their males are at their weakest point after circumcision. It's very difficult for a male, of course. And go and destroy the city. Not just destroy the city, but plunder it. So take all the sheep and the oxen and the women and the children and slaves and so on. What do you think they did that?
Revenge for what they did to their sister, I reckon.
Definitely it's revenge. It says because they defiled Dinah. But let me give you a scenario. Someone that's been brought up in a house where, even when something bad has happened, we forgive. Even when someone has done us wrong, we love. Even when someone has sinned against us, we forgive them. And someone that's grown in a house where everything and any dealing that you have with anyone, you have to come out the winner. You have to make sure that you come out on top. Make sure that whatever you are negotiating with this person, that you take more than you give. The children of those two houses, if they're put in a situation, which one will deal with love and which one will deal in anger? The one where they grew up forgiving will deal with love. The one where they grew up negotiating everything will deal in anger. The anger of these, which are the 12 tribes of Israel, where did it come from? Rebecca and Leah, but even more from who? Why their father? That's the right answer.
And Esau from the beginning.
But before that, who did they see? Laban, their grandfather. Imagine as a child growing up and you're seeing your dad saying, separate these sheep, don't worry about these ones. Take care of this, leave that one alone. This is ours, don't worry about Geddu's. Keep, don't worry about that. No. And then running away. And I'm sure some of the children would have known that Rebecca was sitting under the idols. It's her kids. So they saw her mum, or their mum, or their auntie, lying to her dad. So for these young men, what's their nature? Their nature is, I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to take all that you have. What peace? There's no peace. I don't even know what that word means. And that's exactly how they reacted. And this is where we see Jacob starting to live the agony and the regret of his previous and past sins. Not from his doing, but from his children. A full circle. And it happens. If you look at any child, they're a reflection of their house. There's always going to be special cases, but the majority, the children, are a reflection of the environment that they grew up in. So let's continue. Let's see Jacob's reaction to this. We're at verse 30. Verse 30.
Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you have troubled me by making me obnoxious among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites. And since I am few in number, they will gather themselves together against me and kill me. I shall be destroyed, and my household and I. But they said, should he treat our sister like a harlot?
So they're negotiating with their father. Why are they negotiating with their father? Who did they see negotiate everything in his life? As he did, so they shall do. From generation to generation. So let's continue. Chapter 35. From verse 1.
Then God said to Jacob, arise and go up to Bethel and dwell there, and make an altar there to God, who appeared to you when you fled from the face of Esau your brother. And Jacob said to his household, to all who were with him, Put away the false god, the foreign gods that are amongst you. Purify yourselves and change your garments. Then let us arise and go up to Bethel, and I will make an altar there to God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and has been with me in the way which I have gone. So they gave Jacob all the foreign gods which were in their hands, and the earrings which were in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the terebinth tree which was by Shechem. And they journeyed, and the terror of God was upon the cities that were all around them, and they did not pursue the sons of Jacob.
Wonderful. So we see again, just like we saw so many times in Jacob's journey, he starts off and then he goes down, and he goes down, and he goes down. It's like a slippery slope, and then God intervenes. He said, enough. We saw it with Jacob, with Esau, when he ran away from Esau. He appeared to him in Bethel, where he's going back. We saw it again with his father-in-law, Laban. Again, he said to Laban, don't hurt him. He came to him at night where he wrestled with him. God saying to him, that's enough. Kifay. Go to where I met you, where you didn't believe in me and said, if I help you, you'll be with me. Go there now. I'm telling you, that's where to go. I'm being very prescriptive. And when you go there, you stay there because of me. Not because of you, not because of what you can do, not because of anything. You have to change. That's enough. And this is the first time we see Jacob take charge of his family. He said to them, we're going, but before we even go, all the things that resemble false gods, idols, anything that we've carried along the way, came from Laban's house, came from Shechem, came from anywhere, any representation that doesn't glorify God, take it off and give it to me now. And he took all of it and he buried it under a tree called the terebinth tree. Terebinth tree is a very large tree, and the symbolism behind that is the tree symbolizes the cross. Symbolizes the cross. All the false gods, the earrings, the necklaces, even their clothes, when they took off their clothes, it's taking off the old man and wearing new clothes, wearing the new man. It's their baptism, dying from their old way and being reborn in God's way. Even the old clothes he took all of it and he buried it at the foot of the cross. So God, all our old ways, everything that we've sinned, everything that caused us to sin, everything that kept us away from you, we're taking it and putting it at your feet. And now we've cleansed ourselves and we're ready to go to where you have instructed us to be at home with you. And this is a very beautiful representation of our journey here now, where we take off our old person in the baptism and confirmation, we put on the new person, which is Christ, and we're anointed with the chrismation, and we journey to God's place on earth, which is the church, to be with him. But we can only do that if, like Jacob did with his family, take all the things that keep us from him and bury it at the foot of the cross. All our desires, all our lusts, all our thoughts, all our distractions, all our false gods with a small g, we need to take them and bury them at the foot of the cross if we are truly going to be living a life with him and following his promise for us, which is the heavenly Jerusalem. And as a result of that, Jacob was scared that all the other neighboring cities that would have traded with Shechem, surely they would have known, and they could have banded together and come and plundered and killed all of the tribe, wiped them off the face of the earth. But because God saw the change And God saw his seriousness and the commitment that he made, not just for himself, but for the first time across his entire family. Probably the first thing that he's taught them about God, he protected him and kept everything that was evil away from them. This is the same for us. We spoke about having neighbors and people at work and people at school and what have you. We will come across them. We will interact with them. We will deal with them. We have to choose how much of the door we open to them. But if we are in God's stead, following his way, leaving our desires at the cross and listening and following his path, he will always protect us. And we always see that in our lives, whether it be through tribulations or challenges or even good times, he's always protecting us. But we need to be steadfast in his way. So, let's continue. We'll finish a little bit more from the chapter because I know that we've got 7 minutes before we start Ashay. Can we continue from verse 6?
So Jacob came to Luz, that is Bethel, which is in the land of Canaan, he and all the people who were with him. And he built an altar there and called the place El Bethel, because there God appeared to him when he fled from the face of his brother. Now Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died, and she was buried below Bethel under the terebinth tree. So the name of it was called Alon Beshuth. Then God appeared to Jacob again when he came from Paddan Aram and blessed him. And God said to him, "Your name is Jacob. Your name shall not be called Jacob anymore, but Israel shall be your name." So he called his name Israel. Also God said to him, "I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall proceed from you, and kings shall come from your body. The land which I gave Abraham and Isaac I give to you, and to your descendants after you I give this land." Then God went up from him in the place where he talked with him. So Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he talked with him, a pillar of stone, and he poured a drink offering on it, and he poured oil on it. And Jacob called the name of the place where God spoke with him Bethel. Then they journeyed from Bethel and went.
We'll pause there. We'll pause there because we'll talk about from verse 16 onwards in the next part. But here we see again where he came back to Luz. This is the place where he slept and he saw the angels going up and down. And God said to him, "This is the land I will give you." He still didn't trust him. Between then and when he went to Laban and then went to meet Esau and then Shechem and came back was about 25 years. And this is the first time we see God finally coming back twice and saying to him, "I remind you, you're no longer Jacob, you're now Israel." We said Israel was the name given as the view of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Abraham's faith, Isaac's submission, and Jacob's prayer. You're now Israel. This is your land. And your objective in following me is to continue to fulfill the promise of my chosen people. And I will be with you and I will bless you now that you finally come and are walking in my path. So much so that when death now starts to settle into his tribe, we see that the Bible doesn't dwell on it and that he's burying whatever happens at a terebinth tree, which represents a cross. So whether it's sin, whether it's loss, whether it's anything, he's leaving it at God's hands and at God's feet and allowing God now to take charge of his future. This is now when he has really transformed and become Israel. God willing, next week we'll continue about to see the rest of the trials and tribulations that he will live as a result of what his children have learnt and the lessons that we take from it. And glory be to God forevermore. Amen. Any questions? No? Khalas, wonderful. So next week we'll start from chapter 35, verse 16. Let's go to Vespers.